We have a big update in the case of a college cheerleader accused of hiding dead baby's body in a trash bag in a closet. We have the autopsy and video of her in court per WBIR-TV. Laken Snelling is now out on bond. She's living with her mom and dad on house arrest. What this autopsy tells us about what happened inside of her home and what it could mean for the charges that this former beauty queen is now facing. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. This story is so difficult to comprehend, and it's also so important to remember that there's so much that we still don't know about what happened and about the 21-year-old girl who is at the center of this case. This is video of that 21-year-old college student. Her name is Laken Snelling. This is video of her in court earlier this week per WBIR-TV. She appeared in a red dress. She pleaded not guilty to charges of abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. Snelling posted a $100,000 bond, and she's now on house arrest, living with her mom and her dad. She does not have to wear an ankle monitor. Now, before I get to what this autopsy found, let me break down how all of this started, because we have to go back to last week, August 27th in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's when police were called to the house of Laken Snelling for a report of an unresponsive infant. The child was pronounced dead on scene, according to police. WLEX-TV says that police say the baby was found dead inside a closet. Then there's an arrest citation that says the infant was wrapped in a towel inside of a black trash bag. The citation goes on to say that Snelling reportedly was read her rights, and she allegedly admitted that she gave birth to that baby, and we have since learned it was a baby boy. She then says that she concealed the birth by cleaning evidence and putting all cleaning items inside of that black trash bag, along with the body of her newborn son, who was wrapped in a towel, according to police. Now, it's still unclear how old that baby was or just how far along Snelling was in her pregnancy when she gave birth. What we do know about Snelling is that she's a student at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. In fact, she was a member of the school's stunt cheerleading team, and that's a big deal. The University of Kentucky, we're talking about a large D1 school. They're a member of the SEC. Snelling is also a former beauty queen. She often posts on social media about pageants. I also want to show you this picture here, because this is Snelling on the Kentucky Wildcats official website. Now, what didn't appear on Snelling's social media was, from what we could see, any talk about being pregnant. It appears that she stopped posting pictures of herself in April of this year. Now, that's obviously not a crime, but that could raise questions about her allegedly hiding her pregnancy and keeping it out of sight. Now, another shocking part of all of this is that it appears that she presented herself as someone who had aspirations to one day be a mom. This is the last post that she had on TikTok. It's from June, and it's a picture of her with emojis that describe her. And in the bottom left, we notice there is one that says goals, and it shows an emoji of a mom with a child. Now, it's unclear what has been going on in Snelling's life and the circumstances surrounding what allegedly happened inside her home last week off campus in Lexington. Now, we did find these pictures of her with a man. It's unclear if he's the baby's father or what he knew about what allegedly happened to Snelling's baby boy and what happened inside that home. At the time of this recording, though, no one else has been charged in this case, just Snelling. But police have said the investigation is continuing. Now, we did get this autopsy that came back of that infant that Snelling allegedly said that she gave birth to inside her home. The Fayette County coroner ruled the cause of death inconclusive for that infant boy. Now, this was the preliminary autopsy result that came back, so more tests are going to be done to figure out how this baby died. It's also unclear officially at this point how police found out that the baby was born inside of Snelling's home and how they came about this case. Now, at the time of this recording, this is not murder case. It's important to be very clear about that since we don't know the cause of death of this baby boy. Abuse of a corpse and tampering with physical evidence under Kentucky law are both Class D felonies, and they typically result with a prison sentence between 1 and 5 years. Snelling, again, living at home with mom and dad, no ankle monitor, out on $100,000 bond. She is due back in court in Kentucky on September 26th for a preliminary hearing. In putting this story together, we typed Laken Snelling's name into TruthFinder.com, and it came back showing that she has no criminal record. Now, we use TruthFinder often in the stories that we work on here at Law&Crime because it's a great tool to help us figure out more about the people who are involved in our stories. But hey, even if you don't work in true crime, this can be a great resource for you to give you some peace of mind. It is one of the largest public record search services in the United States, and with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And by the way, right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC. Joining us now is Dr. Nada Rutherford, coroner for Richland County, South Carolina, to help us break down how these autopsies typically work, what we can read into from the information that we have in this very sad case out of Kentucky. Doctor, the preliminary results come back as inconclusive on this newborn that Laken Snelling allegedly gave birth to. What does that result tell you?
It tells us that they cannot answer the question of whether or not this infant took a breath or not, because that's what everyone is going to want to know. Was this a stillbirth, or did this child actually take a breath, and was that breath taken from them, which would totally change the cause of death. So we understand that she may not have reported that she was pregnant, that she concealed her pregnancy. We understand there are a number of reasons of why she may have done that at this young age. But it's going to really matter whether this was a natural death, meaning that stillbirth or something happened during the birthing of this child, or whether or not Laken Snelling took life from this child.
When you go into a preliminary autopsy and you're trying to figure out whether there was, that breath, and I mean, what do you see in an autopsy that would tell you whether or not that baby was ever breathing outside of the womb?
Here's the complication and the challenge when you're looking at a neonate of this size. You're looking to see whether or not certain things have taken place. So how long could the child have lived? What does the umbilical cord look like? Was there an umbilical cord? Was there healing to that stump that may have been there, which would let us know that this child lived for at least a little while after she gave birth? I don't know how you hide this for that amount of time. Usually when we find cases like this, the child is dead within hours of the mother giving birth. And so there's going to be certain things that they look at. Now, what technology Kentucky has available to them is going to be really important for determining whether or not this child took a breath or not. There's all sorts of things that they can do, like a lung flotation test. They can look at whether or not there was aeration of those lungs. They can do post-mortem CT scans or MRI scans that can sometimes give them information. But again, I don't know what complications this baby may have had in utero, if this was a completely normal or an anatomically normal child that was born. So those things are going to be very important as we continue to watch this investigation, to see if there's some other things that may shed light on whether or not the baby took a breath. Because even if there were congenital defects, again, how did the baby die? Was it a natural death that would have happened anyway, or did she get afraid and possibly smother this child, which would be very hard to prove?
In an inconclusive autopsy result for that preliminary autopsy, you talk about the smothering, is there like a shaken baby? And I know we're talking about probably a newborn here, but what does that inconclusive result rule out?
Well, it doesn't rule out anything. It says inconclusive for a reason. They don't know what happened. So shaken baby syndrome, you're going to see damage to the brain. You'll see petechial hemorrhaging in the brain. You're going to see some trauma to the brain of that child. Even with it being so new and freshly born, there's still going to be some damage that you may see. You have to shake a child pretty hard. But if you think about a tiny little baby, just placing your hand over that child's mouth and nose, knows, they can't fight you. They can't pull away from you. They don't have the muscle tone to be able to do that. And so you can smother a child fairly quickly doing that. And I hate to say that out loud, but that's the reality that we deal with at the coroner's office, is that it's very easy to unfortunately kill a child that's of that size. You don't have to use blunt force trauma in order to do it. So the inconclusive doesn't rule anything out. It actually leaves way more questions than answers.
And when it comes to, because often we hear there was preliminary autopsy results and then there's the final autopsy, and sometimes, depending on the state, I think it could take weeks until you get a final autopsy back. What's the difference? What are the, and I know that a lot might depend on like what we're talking about, what technology is available to the coroner in this particular county. It is Lexington, so it's not like a rural county. But with that said, I mean, what happens now in trying to figure out what the cause of death was?
So that let me answer your first question. That preliminary autopsy just tells us that there was nothing that stood out as a smoking gun as to what the cause of death is. So if they thought it was shaken baby syndrome, if they thought that there was some sort of blunt force trauma, if they saw any sort of homicidal markings on the child, then those things are going to be pretty evident, and they would have shared that information with us. So what they mean by inconclusive is they are still waiting on things. Could she have injected the baby with something? Could she have poisoned the baby in some way? Again, is it possible that asphyxiation occurred? So it's inconclusive because there's no smoking gun. Now, could this be a case of the baby's born, she gets scared and again does something to the child? They are not going to rule those things out at this point. They're going to do a full investigation. How was the child found? How long do we think that the baby had been there? Who called 911? What did they actually say? Because from what I saw, it was called in as an unresponsive infant. So was this a fresh birth? What was the texture of the baby's skin? All of these things end up mattering in a case like this. So we have to wait for that full investigation.
Because it seems like just from what I've seen to this point, that she was not very open about being pregnant. She stopped posting, I think it was in June, and she went from posting regularly on Facebook to then not posting at all. So we don't really know whether she was full term, whether she was, how long she was pregnant for. But one thing I just keep thinking about is if she gave birth by herself inside of a house, and then you see her in court, and she looks very much recovered compared to, what it takes to go through birth. I mean, knowing that, I mean, how long do you think she was pregnant for that she could, it seems, recover pretty quickly? I know she went to the hospital for a period of time, but it seems like she's recovered pretty quickly and was able to do this without any medical attention around her.
Well, here's the thing. So it depends on your body. Pregnancy is a lottery. So you have women who go their full term of pregnancy and they may only start showing in their last couple of months. So let's say theoretically, hypothetically, that she was about 6 months pregnant. Most women don't even have a full baby bump by that time. Maybe she stopped posting because maybe she was starting to get a little bit of a bump. And so maybe she was like, oh, I don't want people to ask me questions. But going through childbirth alone, like again, pregnancy is a lottery. She could have died. She could have bled out, hemorrhaged, even. So I have no idea how she did this on her own, unless she had what's called a precipitous birth and the baby just came super, super fast. But again, you're at higher risk the younger you are of having that happen. She was of the age where she could have gotten help. So I'm not sure why she chose not to do that or why she was concealing the pregnancy. But she did look very well recovered. But again, she's young. She's 21 years old. She, according to all things that I've seen, very fit on the stunt team at her college there. So she had a lot of things going for her in terms of being physically fit, and she could just bounce back. I mean, we've seen images where women have a baby and the next day you can see their six-pack abs showing through. So it really is just a matter of pregnancy being a lottery. And yes, she could look fully recovered, but she may still have some bleeding or some different things. Again, when was this child born and what state was this child's body in? That's going to tell investigators a lot about what she did and how she did it.
Because I keep thinking of, I have kids myself, so like I've seen, you just see the medical attention that goes into a birth, and
Yes.
to know that if all of this is true, that she gave birth at home and then has recovered so quickly, it just is it's remarkable if the coroner is able to find out that that baby did had a breath, that baby was born alive. What happens next? What are you looking for to determine whether it was foul play or maybe it was a child that just was born in a tough situation health-wise and passed away on its own?
Well, they'll be able to see if there are any anatomical uh, abnormalities that may have contributed to the cause of death, which is why they've ruled it as inconclusive at this point. They are going to look under the microscope for any histological changes that may be present. They're going to look at the umbilical cord again if it was present. There's certain staining that they could do. I'm not a specialist in umbilical cords, but there are certain stainings that they could do to test whether or not this baby actually took a breath. They look at the blood composition of that. But again, what was found with the baby? And what I'm concerned about is where's the placenta? When you give birth, you don't just give birth to a baby, you give birth to a placenta. So where's the placenta? And if she cut those things off, hid those things, threw them away, this speaks to her state of mind during that time. And if that baby is found to have possibly taken a breath, prosecutors are going to be all over that and they're going to be looking at a charge of homicide, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that you don't even think about, but certainly, as a coroner yourself, I mean, you see these things and how the science can also speak to state of mind, which is so important in cases like this. I feel like it's shocking every time a story like this happens, and it's incredibly sad because this infant loses its life,
Yeah.
whether it be from a stillbirth or anything, more difficult to talk about than that. But how often, I mean, as a coroner, do you see cases like this?
Unfortunately, we see cases like this all the time. I literally just was meeting with the Department of Public Health this morning about fetal deaths and how we count them. Sometimes we go into an autopsy and we don't know that someone's pregnant. And when we open them up, we literally find a fully gestational aged baby inside of the mom. And so those deaths are not typically counted in the normal way. And so we do see it. We see it often enough that we have to have a policy in place for it. So I'll just say that. I know for our office here in South Carolina, we've had at least 5 of these cases where we've gone in, we didn't know mom was pregnant, and then all of a sudden we find a baby, or we've gone on a scene and there's what we would consider to be an expelled fetus, either due from trauma, domestic violence, or what have you. And so there are a number of reasons why these cases occur, and they're not always nefarious. Sometimes it's just a matter of mom dying, and so baby dies as a result of that. And sometimes the labor process happens while mom is dying. So it's not always nefarious, but we do see it often enough that there's a policy in place for it.
And I'm sure it's, an incredibly difficult
It
day when
is.
you have to do an autopsy like that on such a young child. And I noticed in the coroner's message where he recognized that this was a case that has a lot of attention on it. And it's
Mhm.
one that has become a national news story in the past week. And, you do autopsies all the time. That's your job. But what's it like going into an autopsy where you know that there are people across the country that want to know the results that you are going to find out during that?
You go into it with the mindset that you want to tell the story of the death. All of the noise doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much the media wants to know. My goal when I go in for a death investigation and autopsy plus the investigation plus law enforcement, you put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. You look at the child fatality review, you look at everyone who's involved and say, what happened here? What is the actual story? Take the emotion out of it. What actually happened? And as close as we can get to that timeline, that's what we utilize to make a determination. So, as the coroner, I'm writing that cause of death and I'm writing the manner of death on that death certificate. So, I want to be certain that what I put on that death certificate, I could stand before God, a jury, and a group of my peers and say, here's what I believe to have happened in my medical opinion.
And knowing now that this heads to the final autopsy stage and trying to figure out what the cause of death is, and I also know that in different states, different cities, it may be a longer wait time than others. But in your experience, how long would you expect it to be until a final autopsy would be ready to be reported?
I would say the cause of death is what we're waiting for. The autopsy report is going to be whatever it is. They have pretty much completed that portion. What they're waiting for now are the amendments to that, or the complements to that. So what does that histology say? What is pathology looking at when they take the brain, the liver, the kidney, when they're looking at pieces of the heart underneath the microscope, or the lungs? They're looking for signs that aeration may have occurred in those lungs. They're looking for a number of things in those different tests and stainings to kind of either rule in some things or rule out some other things. So they're looking for genetic abnormalities. They're looking for any anatomic abnormalities. They're looking for any poisons, drugs, chemicals that may have been in the baby's system at the time of their death. Because it would also speak to the state that mom was in, because we know that so many things can cross that barrier between mom and baby. So did mom test positive for anything? They have probably already taken toxicology from mom, if she allowed it, if she consented to it. It's not a guarantee, but she can consent to donating her blood and her urine to have it tested as well. But again, what was her state at the time of this child's death, and how close to giving birth did this child die? And so it may still have a little bit of mom's blood in it. That's why that umbilical cord is so important. But did mom get rid of it? Did she get rid of the placenta? Where is it? Those are questions that I would certainly want to know. So it goes kind of beyond the autopsy. That report can be ready within a couple of weeks, but trying to locate the placenta, the umbilical cord, and other things that surround the case is what usually takes longer. So it could be anywhere from 30 to 45 days before we have some answers to some of those questions. And again, what resources do they have at their disposal where that can either speed up that process or prolong it beyond that time frame?
And we'll see how all of it plays out. Very sad story out of Kentucky. Dr. Nada Rutherford, the coroner for Richland County, South Carolina. It's always great to have you and your expertise on law and crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.